everyone, it's Audrey.
It's Adeline.
Welcome to our podcast,
Unlikely Neighbors.
Yay! So today's episode is a little different. We celebrated Adeline's birthday on June 1st, and she turned 25.
Yay!
Yeah, it was so exciting and so much fun. If you haven't wished her happy birthday, now is a good time to catch up on that. But with that same stream, it was sparking a lot of questions and thoughts because I'm turning 25 soon. And yeah, I think we've just both been reflecting a ton on what our lives have looked like the last couple of years.
I think 25 is such a big milestone. Everyone I've talked to who is turning 25 or turned 25 are all I went through some sort of midlife crisis or quarter life crisis, thinking about what I'm doing with my life now. I think for a lot of us 25 was such a big number when you're in high school and stuff, right? You're just you're just wow, I'm 25. When I'm 25 I want to be doing this and this and this, but it's just when it doesn't turn out that way or when things change, obviously, as you grow and mature.
Yeah.
So it just sparked a lot of reflection. So we thought today would be a great opportunity to just talk about, some of the top 3 things that we've learned in our 25 years. I mean, I hope we didn't just learn 6 things throughout our entire life, but we're just highlighting 3 of the things that we thought was important to us, 3 of the biggest lessons that we've learned so far.
Yeah. 25 years, I feel honestly, in comparison to people that have lived up to 70, it's not that much. But it is a lot thinking, back to high school and thinking back to, when we were in middle school. So much transition happens in such a short amount of time. It's crazy. I am just shook when I think about it. I'm oh, man. Adulthood, the transition into adulthood is so significant. Yeah, so hopefully today is interesting to you, whether or not you're older or younger than us. I think there's always new things we're learning from one another. And I hope whatever we share is just beneficial and uplifting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're just 2 girls trying to live intentionally through life.
Struggling.
Learning. And we just hope that, we're able to share our reflections of our 25 years. And, I mean, we'd love to hear your reflections as well.
Ooh, yes. Drop some knowledge.
Yeah, we're definitely not any wise soul, but these are just some things that we've learned.
Yes.
So let's just dive right in.
Yeah, I don't mind going first. I really want to list all of mine right off the bat and then maybe dive in, but I'll just start with a basic one. I think for me, just being aware of what my identity is rooted in, I think that's something I have just always come back to in any area of difficulty. I think especially in college. I was not very self-aware in high school. I think when it came to my identity or what it was found in, but I think I heard a lot of teaching in youth group and from my pastors about it. But I just feel for me coming to understanding what is my identity actually rooted in. Is it in God? Is it in what my peers say about me? That was always, I feel that's a marking struggle of what I've endured through 25 years. It's just understanding that. I feel do you relate?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's always so hard because, I mean, similar to what Rianne was saying in our last episode, knowing your worth and living and knowing your why, that's how you live, that's what you live out of.
Yes.
And so I think growing and learning that, if you grow up in the church or you hear people say God loves you or things like that, it's not necessarily something you can believe in unless you really let it sink in. And to know that we are called to something greater that also will affect the way that we live our life.
Yeah. I think it makes me slow down because I like to move fast. And I think sometimes I just do things to do things. And I think Marianne was so good to articulate why we do what we do. And I think it's easy for me to perform. So if I'm not aware of oh, am I doing this out of performance or am I doing this because I genuinely do care? And what's interesting is in 25 years, we do change so much. So I feel it's very easy to be oh, I'm in identity crisis, midlife crisis or this and that, because so much of both of our surroundings have changed. We've gone to different schools. We've lived in different cultural contexts. All those things make you question, who am I and what is happening? So, yeah.
And I think, also, when we grow up, we're always, putting labels on ourselves.
Yes.
But that's, not very good because we, limit ourselves from growing or, limiting ourselves from having room to grow.
Yes.
So just because I like black today doesn't mean I'll like black tomorrow. Why do we like these labels that we like to identify with? So I think Yeah, that's such a good one, you know, like knowing your worth and knowing that, you know, it can change. I guess what you used to label yourself or what you used to identify yourself with can change over time, and that's okay.
Yes. No, I totally agree. Do you want to share what your first one is?
Okay, yeah. I think similarly on the point of growth and allowing yourself to change, I think I learned a lot about how things are not black and white.
Yes.
I think growing up, I was always like, you know, you're taught this is good, this is bad, you know, this is what you have to do.
Yes.
But what I've realized in my short 25 years.
We sound so silly.
I know.
In my long life.
Yeah, is that things are not black and white. More than often, life is gray, and it's easy to, like, let's say, you know, advocacy. It's easy to support something on one end of the spectrum and be really polarizing, but it's harder to sit in the middle and really wrestle with both sides of the issue and figure out, you know, what you really believe in through that. It's easy to like jump on the bandwagon of something. And living intentionally is so much harder, you know, wanting to, like, I think we always talk about wanting to live intentionally in community and thinking about that. It's not always as black and white. I think growing up, we're always taught like, oh, it's very easy, you know, this is good, this is bad, but really learning that life is most often not.
Yeah, there's so much in between. I actually feel like it's very uncomfortable when you have that reality, because then you're like, whoa, what's true then? If I thought this was good, but this can actually, I think about that in the case of like short-term missions, because we do so much of that growing up, and then it's actually, okay, short-term missions can be harmful and actually not helpful in the long run. So then, oh, what I thought was so good and what I feel like I invested so much of what I love to do is actually bad. Then what is going on?
Yes, exactly. Like, it's always hard to wrestle in the in between, and maybe we don't have the answers, right? Like, it's never so clear cut, but I think having that intention is good. And growing and trying to educate yourself, learning. Like, now that we know that short-term mission trips aren't always good, it's like, what can we do now? So yeah, that was definitely something that has been really hard.
That actually helps clear up judgment too, because it takes us longer, I think, to dive into stuff. Like, it's easy to pick a side, and that will justify kind of like what you believe. You feel a lot of safety and security there. If someone I think a lot about this politically. If someone supports you and you have a community that believes the same thing, there's so much safety in that. But if you take time to pursue and I think try and understand both sides, try and understand, okay, what is actually happening, what is going on, there's so much discomfort, but there's also, I think, at the end of that outcome, with the patience and understanding, you do end up reaching like a point of truth, which is helpful. I feel like it's normal for me, I think, just to jump to a quick conclusion, and that happens in a lot of things, not just politically. But yeah, I think time and patience always like pays off in some things, and like
learning or like taking the time to listen. I think
that
was actually my second one.
Oh, really?
I think it's like a good segue from what you said. Basically, my second point that I feel like I've learned in 25 years is that everyone has a story to tell, and it's easy to judge someone when you don't know them, right? Like, just like what you're saying, like, if you don't have the full picture, if you don't have a full understanding, it's easy to make a quick judgment. But once you actually know and listen and empathize, then it's harder to judge them and harder to say like, oh, why did you do that? So I think that's definitely something that I've learned, and that's why community is so important to, I think, both of us, right? Like, having, you know, people that you can be vulnerable with and really grow and learn from. Like, that's when I feel like life is the best, is when you're able to learn and grow with community and understand their story. It's like similar to like the TED Talk, The Danger of a Single Story, when you only have one side of, when you only know one side, that's all you're gonna think of, and that's how, you know, we start stereotyping or like, you know, having all these unconscious biases at the back of our mind. Which is why, like, it's so important to have community, like a diverse community, and people you're able to cry with, laugh with, you know, who are your greatest cheerleaders, yet also the people who speak into your life and challenge you. You know, having good community, even doing this podcast, you know, having people support us, I think that's also been like so valuable.
I actually have two things, because one of my points relates a lot to that, but there's this quote I absolutely love. So from Humans of New York, he photographed this woman who worked for the UN, and she said, I don't think there would be so many walls if people knew each other's stories. And to me, that's so powerful, because it's like when you can put a story to a face and a story to a name and understand like what a human experience is, and not just kind of like let people be a headline, let people be I think, distance from you. I think when people's lives spill into your own, that's really where compassion and empathy starts, where it's not just like separated. But when you invite people into your home, when you invite people, like, I think, to take part of your life, it just is so much more meaningful. Yeah. I loved everything you shared. I think that's so true. I think it's cool because that's something I see you live out a lot. So I feel like you know that. Yeah. You're like, oh.
I'm so touched.
Yeah, no, but you do. I think you live very intentionally with community. And so my second point is choosing the right community is very important, and it will reap benefits for years to come. And I think what you said, choosing intentional community, choosing people who are diverse to be around you. I think that what's crazy that always blows my mind is like still being able to be friends with people from high school. I did not realize the decision I was making in high school would benefit me post-college.
Yeah,
right?
I didn't think about that.
Isn't that crazy? Like, just thinking about that, it's like, whoa, I feel like I still reap so much from these relationships, from these communities, those people that I made time for and, like, chose to do things with. It just benefited. Like, I'm so grateful now because I don't have to start from scratch. I don't have to, like, I don't even know how to phrase it. These people know me so well from that time.
And I think it's also so powerful to have people who have known you for so long and seeing your growth.
Yes.
And, like, yeah, because we were just looking at photos from, like, how many years ago now? 12 years ago. And we were just thanking God for puberty.
Yes,
because
seriously.
we look tragic.
I want to share it, like, on my story, but I'm also so embarrassed at the same time.
I think that's so true. Having people that you've walked alongside with for so many years, there's something so powerful about that, right? Because they've seen you at your worst. They've seen you at your best.
Yeah.
And that's just so special.
It is. And I think I realized, like, you really do become, like, the people you hang out with. I didn't realize it so much in high school because I feel like everybody kind of acted the same because we all were in, like, such a small, like, cluster of people. But I really feel like in college, you have so many options to be able to choose from. Like, you don't even have to be friends with people on your campus. You could just be friends with people, like, in another place. But you have so many options of who to choose to be your friend. You really feel like you have a choice there. And I just feel like in that scenario, I learned that it really is important, like, who you pick. Like, the habits I have today, I picked up from people I lived with in college. Yeah. Like, so much of that stuff was influenced by that. And, yeah, I remember people always were saying your top 5 or, like, your closest 5 are the people you become. And I believe that 100%. I can't.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think it's the same when you, like, have any close friendships, relationships, marriage. It's all, like, whoever is closest to you is what you will, like, turn into, pretty much.
I think that's why, I mean, I've shared this before, but I think that's why it was so hard for me transitioning post-grad is because, like, I was really blessed enough to, like, make really, you know, lifelong friendships over in college. And so, like, transitioning from that and, like, figuring out, like, okay, how can I still live intentionally in community when my community looks completely different? And how can I still continue to connect with people who, like, I really value all around the world? And so it's just, like, transitioning to that and learning that community can look different. It doesn't mean it's, like, better or worse. But yeah, definitely, like, investing in those relationships is so important.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to navigate, especially with, like, lots of change. I used to be very envious of people who, like, lived in America and stayed in the same small town because I was like, oh, you don't have to suffer, like, the peril of, like, moving and doing this and, like, having to, like, start over and blah, blah, blah. But I actually feel like there is so much to gain from that. Yeah, like, to learn how to, I think, just put yourself out there to learn how to, like, navigate long-distance friendships. And, yeah. Did you have another one you wanted to?
Oh, the third one.
Sure.
So my third one, my last one of this podcast is that life doesn't always go according to plan. So it's important to, you know, trust that God has a plan for us. He's, like, the only constant thing. I think, you know, we can plan all we want. We can prepare, you know, all our lives we've been preparing for post-grad, but that definitely doesn't go as planned. But, you know, it is important to have your trust in God because He ultimately has the plan, or He ultimately knows everything. But also it's important to have grace for yourself and others as well. I think when life doesn't go according to plan, it's easy to, like, hate on yourself or, like, hate on other people, blame other things. But we are all trying to do our best, and so having grace for one another and loving one another, and yourself. I think I'm very hard on myself, so like learning to have grace for myself, even, you know, as I navigate through life and transition and trying to, you know, better myself. You know, it's always a journey. I think I always try to be like, okay, I want to go from A to Z now, but like that doesn't happen. And also part of that, like when life doesn't go according to plan, it's like have a good sense of humor about it.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right? I think it's so helpful when like you have friends or have people who can laugh about stuff with you. Like, oh my gosh, remember when this stupid thing happened? And just like appreciate that God throws curveballs at us, and how are we going to navigate through that and trust that life is still going to be good.
Yeah. I actually feel like that's similar to your black and white point too, because it's like nothing is determined until like life happens. And even then you can't guarantee what an outcome will be. That's so good. That's definitely like a struggle I feel like I had, where I'm very much like a planner and I like to have things in order, and just learning how to surrender and let go of those things and trust that it can still be good if it is not how I picture.
Yeah, exactly. I think speaking to a lot of my friends, like including you and like other people who have come out of college, it's like life doesn't usually go according to what we thought it would be. Even if you, let's say, studied a profession that like, oh, it's very clear cut, like being a lawyer or being a teacher, but like, no, it's never that easy, and it's never what you envisioned. But how can we like let go of that and trust that even in the midst of everything, there are lessons to be learned from it as
there's
well.
purpose in all of it. My third point is, do not be afraid to try and to try again. And I think this is something I've always just tried and pushed myself to do, because I think on a personal level, it's very easy for me to feel defeated. So if I attempt to do something and I'm not like phenomenal at it off the bat, this is very much a 3 thing. If I'm not like phenomenal like at this skill or like this hobby that I'm trying, I'm just like, oh man, I don't even want to like pick it up again, because I don't want to feel bad about not being good. But I think the second push of trying again is really what has helped me. I think even recently, like last night, I was trying to do some form of public speaking for our youth group, and it was just, I felt like I was like, oh man, I'm so rusty and this is not good, but I know when an opportunity is presented again, I will try it again, because I know it's something I want to grow into. And I think just that second push, for some reason, curiosity is what gets me to do something in the first place. If I'm like, oh, podcast, I'm curious, like I'm gonna test this out, or like, oh, cross stitching, I'm curious. Or like anything, like any kind of job, career, whatever. I'm always curious, and that gets me my foot in the door. But it's the second step of like, okay, that didn't feel very good, or that didn't work out super well. Am I gonna try it again? So I think for me, that's just kind of been like what helps me is give people a second try, and don't just like rule it off at the beginning.
No, I think that's super good, because I think even trying it in the first place is already really hard. But then like what you're saying, like the second step of like, okay, that didn't feel good, but like having the courage to stick it out and like be like, oh, let me try it again and see how I can improve, or like see if it's good. I think when you already know that something's bad or you're not good at it, it's always easy to like be like, okay, bye. But yeah, I think you're really good at that too. Like you've pushed yourself out of your comfort zone in a lot of different ways, doing MCing or like other public speaking things. I think that's always really good.
It can be bad to a fault, where it's like you keep trying and it's like, okay, this is really not a good fit, or it's like it's unhealthy and you're like pursuing it.
But that's why you need good community, I feel, because then they can be like, okay, Audrey, maybe
don't be stupid.
You shouldn't be an MC anymore.
Like there's people to call you out and help you like grow and improve, and then there's like a time to like step away. But sometimes I feel like good things are just cultivated over a period of time, and the expectation that I think people hold themselves to will be too high and very unrealistic, where it's like I need to be good at my occupation today, the first day of work, and it's like, no, that's not true. It's going to take like a couple months, maybe a year, to really get used to your job. I think it's just like unhealthy expectations. So the second time and the third time and the fourth time, you get more reality kind of thrown in there.
I mean, that kind of relates to what I was saying about having grace for yourself and others. It's like, it's a lot easier to be like, okay, I want to do this now and today, when in reality, like it might take you a year or even more to really hone in and really, you know, what is that word? Like,
develop your skill, maybe?
Like do something well, excel in something. Like I think it's easy because now we see a lot of people online doing something like doing amazing things at 25, right? Which is probably why we have this quarter life crisis. Because we're like, oh wow, you're only 22 and you're already doing this, and like what am I doing with my life? But why can't we like celebrate others' achievement without like pointing at ourselves and how we don't achieve this certain standard that we set for ourselves? So I think like having grace and the courage to try again, even when it's hard.
Yes.
I think that's why, I mean, both of us have picked up a lot of hobbies this year. I think we're not very good with hobbies. We're always like, how can it be a side hustle? How can it like get us something more? So like even this podcast, like starting it, not gaining any monetary money from it or like any other benefits except growing a community and trying to live out intentionally. I think that's growth for us. I think,
it's very new. Yeah, for sure. Just to keep you guys in the loop, actually, Adeline and I did not share our 3 points prior to this interview, and I think there's so many things to try and capture about 25 years. It's very hard. So this episode is actually a challenge for us personally, reflecting on this, but I think it's kind of fun. So we're gonna try and do maybe one word for what the last 25 years of our lives have been, like try and brainstorm on the spot. One word I would use to describe the last 25 years of my life, I would say would be directed. And this kind of ties into a theme I think I've been reflecting on a lot, is how God's plan is always like, he knows what's going on and he is in charge of like our steps and our path in our life. And I just feel like my life, I like to take charge of things. I like to be in control of my life, but really I feel like my life is directed by God. It's just cool to see, and I feel that in my life each step has been directed, if not by me, by God. You know what I mean? I think there's moments where it's like, okay, I want to do this and plan it myself, but really it's like, I just feel like that's a very encompassing word. How about you?
Yeah, I think for me it would be so hard to pick one word. Maybe intentional, because I think I try really hard to live intentionally, not just in community but also in society, and like in everything I do, I think I try to be very intentional, if not like genuine about it. So I think and learning that life is more about the little moments than the big things, and like how can I still live intentionally even in the little moments.
Yeah, you're very invested. But I feel like that was actually quite accurate for both of us.
I think so too. So that was 6 things that we have learned over our 25 years. We are still babies, but we're just trying to reflect a lot on like what we've learned and how can we take that into our future. Also, it's cool to see how like even though Audrey and I lived separately in college and stuff, that our life lessons kind of still overlap.
I was kind of surprised by that. I think it's funny just because a lot of people probably have similar experiences. Most of you listening, you probably have learned similar things throughout college, but I feel like every year there's something unique, and like what Adeline said, every person's experience is different. So I think it's really cool to hear like what people have learned over the last 25 years. I love this as like a talking point with older people. I love to ask like, oh, what was something you were doing when you were my age? Like, what was something you were doing when you were 25? Or like asking young people like, oh, like what's your experience like at your age? It's such a common like thing to be able to connect on. I'd say it's just everyone goes through different struggles and changes throughohout life, and I think it helps open vulnerability too with what those issues are. Like nobody has a perfect life, and nobody has, I think, a perfect timeline of how their life is planned out.
Nowadays there's so much pressure on like the 20s, I would say, like but then back then, because when I talk to like older people, they're always like, oh, you're still young, like when I was your age I didn't do this and this and this. But I think for some reason maybe it's how easily accessible information is now. You know, Instagram, Google, like you can see how much other people are doing, which puts a lot of pressure on yourself or like on other people as well. But then actually a lot of people are just like, life is life, you know, you just like go by it, like don't worry too much, like life will turn out the way it's supposed to turn out. And I think that kind of mentality is very helpful as well, like what you're saying, like directed, you know, like having faith and trust that your life will go according to plan.
It's very healthy, and I always appreciate that like perspective and insight into my life. We're gonna share something that we hope to develop in our 25th year of life, preferably probably more of like a character trait. I have 2. So one for the present I would say is rest. I think this is something I'm currently like wrestling with a little bit. Is I feel like I push myself hard and I like to like be busy and do a lot of things, but I think this part-time schedule of work and I think being at home and living far away has really pushed me to rest. And I think even when I'm in that environment, I need to be very intentional to actually choose to rest, to relax, to like something I've started doing is like turning off my phone at night and just letting, like, naturally waking up with the sunlight, and that's really helped a lot, where I'm not like on technology in the evening and things like that. I love that. But I think for the like fullness of the year, I think the word that I want is like boldness. I really want to grow, and I think just being more bold and being not necessarily decisive, but I think confident in my skill, my ability, and even I think just expressing my opinion. I think as a just my personality, I feel like it's easy to care what people's response would be to my opinion. So I like to gauge how I think people will respond to what I'm going to say. So I kind of want to, I guess, just like throw that fear out the window and just kind of like go for what I think, what I believe, what I appreciate, and what I stand for.
Yeah, that's really good. My hope for this next year would be like being present. I think that's something that I'm really working on. Yeah. I think it's easy for me to get caught up in caring about other people or like what they think or like trying to get somewhere or like where am I in life, you know, just like have so many of these thoughts in my head. But I think like being present and learning to love and listen to other people well is something that I'm looking forward to.
Wow.
I really want to be able to love people where they're at better. I think it's easy to, you know, have these expectations or see other people's potential and want to get like you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like you want people to like, come on, you can do better than this.
Yes.
But it's like, no, how can I love them where they're at? And, you know, live life alongside of them as well. So yeah, being present.
Like not the need to change people, but the need to like accept people where they are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's so good. Yay. Well, I think that's it for this episode. So much to reflect on. If you're turning 25, good luck. You're in the same boat as us. I don't know. Actually, I guess people we graduated with from college are probably the same age as us. But I actually feel like our friends are quite diverse in age range. Yeah, so super exciting.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for listening. I hope, you know, it was interesting for you to listen to, you know, what we've learned. I think we're always very interested in like conversing or like talking to people about these kind of things. We were also talking about it like on my birthday and things like that. So we're like, why not record an episode about it and just like reflect even more on what we have learned. I think reflection is always a good way for us to live intentionally and like live authentically as well. So yeah, I mean, we'd love to hear what you guys think. What is the key lesson that you've learned in your life so far? And what are you hoping for in the next year?
I think sometimes it's nice sharing it with other people too, because that kind of, it provides a sense of accountability, which I love, but it also gives us like the courage to live it out. Like to me, when I voice something out to someone else, it's like, oh, well now I feel like I really need to pursue this because I've vocalized it. But yeah, share it with a friend, share it with us.
And doing things in community is so much better. So.
Oh yes, always. Thanks so much for listening. Go find us on other platforms like Instagram. Give our post a like. Comment below the post what you are looking forward to in your next year or a lesson you've learned. Bye.
Bye.